We came from the Middle East. We were hoping that, it'd be a bit more inviting about, this sort of weather out here. But it's just, I don't know, my parents might have picked the wrong country. It's like La Nina was meant to happen for 1 year, but it seems to happen like twice. And it's only meant to happen like once every 7 years. But when it seems that way. There's certainly some weather-making legislation. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. And I want to welcome everyone online. Today, we're here to basically, I was invited to talk here to talk about how to vote the upcoming election. If there's one thing that we can all agree on in this room, is the last 2 years have been pretty bad. Really, we've been upset. We're all taxpayers. We're all upset with the way the government's been mishandling the government money. They've run up $880 billion, $500 billion, which have just happened in the last 2 years. That's something that young people, including myself, should be the biggest sort of concern for us. How we're going to own a home, how we're going to own a number of things. To add insult to injury, we've seen what's been going on in Victoria. My partner's from Victoria, actually. She's a recent. She's someone that's really fought against what's been going on down there. And New South Wales hasn't been much better either. Personally, I've had the cops come to my place 8 times after the town hall protest. I'm still finding things in court with them right now. But this is the point. We've gone through a lot these last 2 years. And I think we're all pretty much sick of these people who I don't think are better than the people in this room, telling us what to do with our money, who we can associate with, what we put into our bodies. And the purpose of me being here and the organisation I represent, Turning Point Australia, is I'm here to say there's a better life. I'm not here to sell you a golden ticket. I'm here to empower you as individuals. I think that the most powerful thing in this country, and something that the Anzacs, which we reflected on the weekend, what really made them great was the individual liberties that they fought for. And for the fact that they believed in values that make you as an individual powerful. Not as a collective. That's communism. We don't need that here. In Australia, we believe in, it comes from a Christian ethos. We're conservatives at core. We were convicts when we came out here. The reason why so many people with eyebrows like mine and beards like mine come here is because it's a beautiful country. My family, they're Christian, they're from the Middle East, and it's not so out there. In order to get anything done, you've got to do it corruptly in Lebanon. And Australia is just such a beautiful place, and to see what's happened in the last 2 years, it's hard. So today I'm here to talk to you guys about exactly how we can make a difference, exactly what we can do to get the biggest bang for your buck when you vote. There's a lot of freedom paths. I'm sure we've all noticed. And I'm going to run through that in a bit, but we'll come to that later. But I want to first off talk to you about why are we here? If I could describe the last 2 years in an analogy, I would describe it as this. You are blindfolded, your hands are tied, your legs are tied, and they're just beating the crap out of you. You can't see who's doing it, you don't know why they're doing it, you don't know how to fight back. Well, I'm here to say that I'm trying to give you the tools to firstly understand why this is happening, and secondly, how you can fight back. The last 2 years have happened because we haven't played a role in our democracy. We checked out of our democracy. We had 30 years of economic growth uninterrupted with the recession. That's about to change. Things are about to get really tough. Average Australians haven't engaged in their democracy the last 40 years. Over the course of this pandemic, there have been a lot of petitions we've been signing. The best one we got was that it was 309,000 signatures, and it was that the Jammal must abide by the Nuremberg Code. So there's got to be certain consent related to that. That got 309,000 signatures. Back in the day, when churches and communities were a lot stronger and we had a social fabric, they were racking up 2 million signatures. This is petitions. Before online petitions. Why were they able to do it? Oh, sorry, that's a reminder. Everyone please turn off your phones and notifications. Thank you for the reminder. How were they able to rack up 2 million signatures going door to door from church to church and to do that? Well, they had a social fabric. We don't have that anymore. We don't know what we want anymore. We've got people that burn the Australian flag. They say abolish Australia Day. I'm sorry, I love this country and I don't want to see it further dissolve into chaos like what we've seen the last 2 years. So we're here because
we haven't been engaging with our politicians. We haven't been telling them what we want. And it's gotten to the point where they could just do whatever the hell they want. We're now in a situation where the mainstream politicians, they create legislation to protect the establishment. It's that far entrenched. We've got a bit of a window of opportunity to make a change here, and it's really important that we understand that we shouldn't take it for granted what's going on. So a lot of people have been asking me about how to vote, how to make your vote count the best. Over the course of the last 2 years, there have been a number of parties called freedom parties, which I've mentioned. And you can see them sort of listed up here. The first one's unregistered, that's Ricardo Bossi's Australia One. You've got the Australian Values Party, that's Heston Russell. You've got Bob Katter's party in Queensland, Drew Pavlo's Democratic Alliance. You've got the Federation Party, the Great Australia Party, GAP, the IMOC Party, Informed Medical Options Party. You've got the Liberal Democrats Party, Libertarians, and Pauline Hanson's One Nation, and the UAP Party, United Australia Party, that's Clive Palmer. Now, what is it that all of these parties have in common? Well, it's mainly 3 things, maybe 4 things. They believe in freedom of speech. They believe that you shouldn't be banned online. They believe that you should be able to have free and open discourse. That's a good one, because if you don't have that, you can't fight for anything. They don't believe in lockdowns. They think what's happened over the last 2 years is an absolute travesty. They believe that you should have the choice to be jabbed, so that there should be no mandates, so that when you go for a job, you don't have to have a jab. And also they all agree that there should be no jab passports, so you can't restrict people in your business. Pretty basic stuff, but there's 10 parties. So you're spoiled for choice in terms of which party you either want to help or vote for. So that's really good. Now, how can we make a difference this election, and how does the election actually work? So in Parliament, there's a lower house and there's an upper house, federally speaking. We've got the federal parliament, that's on a national level. We've got the state parliament, New South Wales, all the other states as well, and territories. And then you've got the local level. Now, we had our local elections last year in December. That was interesting to see how there was a 9% swing against the Liberal Party, and the Labor Party lost a lot of votes. But we've got a federal election coming up on the 21st of May. It's 3 weeks ago. It's 3 weeks away. And there's a lower house and an upper house for the election. The way it works is, and this is an awesome map. This is from compliments of George Christensen from Queensland. Thank you, George. So this map, what you can see, the colourful side on the left, all of this is showing you exactly what the lower house is. In the lower house, you've got 151 seats. It's called the House of Representatives. Each seat, each little area you can see, it represents about 100,000 people. That's the lower house. In the upper house, it's called the Senate. There's 76 senators that are there. And you can see that information on the senators just down here. That's this little column up here. Now, how is it that a bunch of minor parties can hold the government to account? How is it that we can get the biggest bang for our buck with our vote? Well, there's this thing called the balance of power. The Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and Anthony Albanese, they're not doing too well. People don't really like what they've been doing the last 2 years, because it's been not only Labor but also Liberal on a state and federal level that haven't been doing a good job. On a state level, Dom Perrottet, Gladys Berejiklian, Dan Andrews, they've been doing a terrible job. They locked people down, they've kept these mandates up, and they're only just releasing them just in time for the election. On a federal level, Scott Morrison, he didn't bring in the mandates. He gave the tools to the state government in order to enforce these mandates with the digital passports, and he did not legislate vaccine freedom. And that's on him, and that's why I believe he deserves to go. These are the parties we've got. As I was saying, the lower house and the upper house they're in a situation where the Prime Minister and Anthony Albanese, a lot of people don't want to vote for them. We're seeing record low amounts of people wanting to vote for the major parties, and that poses a great opportunity. Not only to freedom parties, but also to Climate 200 candidates, if you've heard about them, independent candidates that pretend to be independent, but they're actually with the Labor Party. I'm seeing some heads nodding. We could see a situation where, let me take a step back. The major parties right now, as I said, a lot of people are not happy with them. There's this thing called a primary vote. It's your first vote on a ballot. In this country, the major parties are having record low amounts of people putting their primary vote for the major parties. Record low. The primary vote right now is at about 36 to 37%. That leaves about 30% for the minor parties to get. There's a seriously big chance that we could see some minor parties get up. But how could they make a difference? Lower house and upper house. That's what we've got here. Now in the lower house, I mentioned before, there's 151 seats. Now in order for Scott Morrison or Anthony Albanese to be the Prime Minister, he has to form government. How does he do that? He needs a majority of seats. He needs 76 seats. It's looking like neither one of them might actually get that. And if they can't manage to get 76 seats, that means there's this thing created called the balance of power. There's these freedom parties who could make up that balance of power in the middle. And there's also the climate independents who could make up that balance of power. We don't want them to get it. If they do, they're going to take us into a totalitarian direction. We're going to have climate lockdowns. We're going to have all sorts of things. It's going to be bad. But if the freedom parties get it, then all of a sudden we're in a situation where we can legislate and force the government to do what we want and say no lockdowns, no mandates, no passports, freedom of speech, and whatever else they want to agree on. We need to get rid of the debt. We need to fix it up. We need to be more fiscally responsible. Maybe defence needs a bit more bolstering against China. I don't know. We'll talk about it. But those four things, the original four things we agree on, those are things that the freedom parties will probably form a coalition after the election, and they'll talk about that. So in the lower house, there's 151 seats. There's a balance of power which could be potentially captured. There's less of a chance of that. But in the Senate, it's a different story. It's a completely different story. There's 76 seats, and there's a better chance, I think, we're going to see some freedom candidates get up. And you can see me smiling because I'm actually quite excited about this. So this is how it works. So in the lower house, as I said before, you've got about 100,000 people per electorate. You know, I'm from Parramatta. Over here, it's a marginal seat. There's 4 pieces of data there. You've got the name of the electorate. You've got the colour of who won it. That's the Australian Labor Party. Julie Owens is the one that has it, and she won it by 3.5%. So that's 53.5%. That's a marginal seat. That's a seat that's up for grabs. And there's some great candidates in my area which are really good. But we're not here to talk about Parramatta. Your fight, from talking with the lovely Kylie, it's looking as though you guys are mainly focusing on Dobell, Shortland, and Robertson. These are all marginal seats. That's very exciting because you could actually make a serious difference here. You've got 2 Labor seats and 1 Liberal seat. Now, put your hand up if you're a candidate. Put your hand up if you're a candidate here. Can you please stand up? Please stand up. Beautiful. God bless you. God bless you. So I've got presents for you guys before this finishes. I've got this map, and I want to gift you, each one of you, that. So can you quickly say who you are and which party you're standing for and which electorate you're standing for?
This electorate, Jammal, Ben Mackin for the United Australia Party.
Thank you. Thank you.
One Nation for Robertson.
Awesome.
And Martin Stevenson, Bell for One Nation.
Kate Mason, Informed Medical Options Party for Robertson.
Ben Maxwell for Shortland for the United Australia Party.
Awesome. Did I miss anyone? Oh, beautiful. Now, please take a seat and find me after this. I want to give you one of these maps. Ladies and gentlemen, find these people after this, because if these are people that you agree on those policies, they're people that need your help. They do. It's one thing to vote for freedom parties, and this is the thing, guys. On the 4th of May, I'm coming out with these how to vote cards. It's very simple. You could just follow the card. You could even alter it and, make it how you want. And And that could be something you want to do. But these people that stood up, they need help. They need volunteers to stand in the polling booth. Now, of course, I'm going to throw the caveat there. Don't kill yourself in terms of how much time you volunteer. Look out for number one. But these people, they're going to need help manning the polling booths because most people are going to make their decision up on whether they vote at the polling booths. And if you don't have volunteers at the polling booths, then you won't get any votes. Let's take a step back, though. Let's take a step back. I was mentioning how in the lower house, we'd have probably less of a chance than the upper house. Now, there's 100,000 voters per electorate. The Freedom community, we've had some pretty big protests. I'm sure you'd agree. In Canberra, we got a few 100,000 people from across the country there, possibly millions. And we saw a situation where everyone was concentrated in one area. We had lots of big protests in Melbourne, Sydney, around the country, but to have them all in one place was amazing. Well, this is the problem. In the lower house, they split us up. They split us up, you know. You need about 30 to 50% of the vote in order to win any one of these electorates. It's very difficult. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. I'm glad you guys have a lot of marginal seats here. That's very encouraging. But I can't lie, it's very difficult. In the upper house, it's a different story. Completely different story. So with the Senate, the way it works is there's 76 senators in the upper house. Not all of them go up for election each election. Only half of them do. Every state has 12 senators and every territory has 2 senators, so Northern Territory and Canberra. This election, we have half the senators up for grabs. So in New South Wales, rather than all of them being up for grabs, there's only 6 of them. And that's the same situation for the other states. The reason why they did that was because if there was a big populist uprising or whatever, it sort of staggers the change in the nation, so we don't have anything radical happen. There's the founding fathers, there was some wisdom in that. But what it means is that in order to get a Senate seat, if there's 6 Senate seats up for grabs in New South Wales, you need about 11, 12% of the vote. We're talking 800,000 votes. It's a lot of votes in New South Wales. In Tasmania, it's only 60,000 votes. Because isn't that weird? A senator in Tasmania is equivalent to New South Wales, yet it takes 800,000 votes in New South Wales versus 60,000 in Tasmania. But when they were doing the federation, they obviously wanted to make it amicable for all the states to come together, and so they sweetened the deal. So the good thing about the senators is that is often where bad legislation goes to die, because you've got some great senators like Pauline Hanson, Malcolm Roberts, they're from One Nation, but then you have some government senators that also speak up. We had 5 government senators vote with Pauline Hanson on her freedom of choice bill on the jab. That's amazing. That's 7 senators. That is the balance of power. So in many ways, we actually already have the balance of power, but they haven't used it yet. But that's going to change very soon. Next, this election, I think we're going to see a situation where we may not get the balance of power in the lower house, but we will in the upper house. Because remember, every bit of legislation that the Prime Minister puts forward, it has to go through the lower house, go through debate if he has the numbers, 76 votes, and then it goes to the upper house to be voted on. And in the Senate, we could see a situation where the Freedom Party say, no, we want vaccine freedom, no, keep slapping it down. And the Prime Minister is just, it's a stalemate. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And that doesn't matter if it's Scott Morrison or Anthony Albanese. That's a really good way to hold him to account. So and this is the thing, the reason why I'm pointing out all of these candidates around here is you're not just voting for them, it's a double whammy. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're also voting for the Senate candidate as well for those parties. It's very important. So how do you vote? How do you vote? A lot of people have been asking me, how do I make my vote most count? Now, if you really want to get into the nerdy side of it, like me, there's a lot of different intricacies about how to vote to make it count the most. The first person you put on the ballot gets $2.90, or their party gets $2.90 every vote. So if you really want to hurt the major parties, and if your friends really want to hurt the major parties, but they don't want to see Liberal or Labor win, just don't put them first. At least you're depriving them of their funding. Every election, so in the last election, there was $27 million of your taxpayer money which went to the Liberal Party, and 25 million which went to the Labor Party due to all of that funding, that $2.40 at the time, but this election is $2.90. If you give that to some of the freedom parties, that means they're going to have greater capacity to run at the federal election and the state election. And there's more elections coming up. In November this year, there's the Victorian elections, and in March next year, there's the New South Wales state elections, and we're going to be on. Now, if you're not sure about all this and you're not sure which candidates are running, I encourage you all to read up on the candidates to running in your area. But I understand if you don't have time. A lot of people work multiple jobs, many, 4 or 5 kids. At least my mum did. And if you didn't work that out, but no. Yeah, I've got these how to vote cards coming out on the 4th of May. This is the top project I'm working on. I'm working on a number of projects, but if all of them failed, this is the one I really want to get across the line. We're on track. On the 4th of May, next Tuesday, we're releasing all of these how to vote cards for every seat around the country, all 151 seats, and also the Senate. That's for people that don't know. They just don't know. So it's as simple as you go to this website, simple link on the Turning Point website, and you put in your address, and it'll be live. It'll spit out a how to vote card, nice and simple, and it'll say, look, these are our recommendations. It's consensual, obviously. I believe in consent, and when it comes to who to vote for in each electorate, a lot of people ask me the question, who are these independents running? I have no idea who they are. We've looked into them, even though there's 1,500 of them. We've looked into them. It was a lot of work. And we only found out about who they were a week ago, because that's when the AEC comes out and says who they are. And that's one of the best things that I can do to help people understand and not be... The establishment has taken advantage of your lack of knowledge for too long, and I'm sick of it. I really am sick of it. This is a free event, and I run purely on donations. I have for the last 2 years, because I lost my job in construction, and I'm just sick to death of the government taking advantage of your lack of knowledge on these matters and then passing legislation to further entrench their power. I mean, they literally passed a bit of legislation that meant that the Liberal Democrats Party, which is the third from the bottom there, they literally have to change their name after this election if they don't win a parliamentarian. There's rules in that legislation that the freedom parties have to do, and many of them were deregistered, but the major parties don't have to do because they have sitting parliamentarians. It makes me sick. And so I'm trying to arm everyone with as many skills and as much knowledge as I can. I didn't study this. I come from a construction background, just like my father, God rest his soul, and I lost my job due to the lockdowns in 2020. So I've had a gutful of government, as you could probably tell. And there's nowhere else to go. I'm not going to Florida after this, You can't have a situation where the head of Turning Point Australia goes to Florida because he's evacuated. He gets a refugee status. That's exact. Go to France. I think Emmanuel Macron would accept you probably, but I think that this election we're going to see some very significant results. I'm genuinely excited about it. I think that, in my opinion, I think Pauline Hanson's probably going to do the best. And that's not because, I'm not saying that I like her policies the best. I've looked at the ground game. I've seen what One Nation's been doing. I like the bottles. I like the cartoon series she came out with. I like the policies. And I just think that, on a statistical level, I think she's going to do very well. But this is the point, guys. The how to vote cards I'm coming out with, you can pick any one of these freedom parties. I'm going to make sure that the preferences you put down give the best chance of any one of these guys of getting up. You don't just have to pick one. You can always tell someone who understands the preferencing system because they'll have more than one sign outside their house. You don't have to pick one. Like you've got, I think there's 3 candidates here or 2 or 3 candidates from the same electorate. Mate, grab one from all 3. Honestly. And that's the thing. This isn't my home. This is your home. Save it. Like this is your backyard. And this isn't the last election. We've got another one in March next year. I mean, the Victorians have one in November this year. I'll be down there helping them because they need a bit of help with Dan Andrews. But yeah. But guys, own it. Teach your kids. Show them. There was this how to vote card thing that I came out with. I didn't come up with that myself. It was actually a little kid that pointed out to me. He was 9 years old. We were at a protest for Reclaim the Line in August last year. And we were talking, and I was saying, guys, make your vote count. These local elections, coming up in December. And I went to the side, and I think it was his auntie who was talking to me, Michelle. And she said, who do we vote for? And I said, well, vote for the Freedom Parties. At the time, there was only 7 of them. And I said, well, vote for the Freedom Parties. There's 7 of them. And she said, which ones are the Freedom Parties? And I said, well, I've listed them before. And the kid puts his hand up, and he says, I know the Freedom Parties. And then I said, really? I was like, list them. And he listed them. And I was like, wow, that's the future. Show your kids how to do this. And this is what it goes back to. Why do you have a lack of knowledge? I'm not blaming anyone's parents here. I'm not. I'm just saying that there was a time when the education system, there was a time when people were more engaged in their democracy. Step up. Teach your kids how to do it. Show them how you're doing it. If you want to letterbox, or if you want to hand out pamphlets, do it with one of your kids. Obviously, keep it safe. But do it with one of your kids. Show them how it's done. It's tough as an older parent. Sometimes it's easier for me, being slightly younger, to talk to the kids about it. And I understand that. It's hard being paternal. But this is how we're going to not only win our democracy, but keep it. Because that's what happened. We once had a democracy here. I just realised something very obvious. I didn't explain how the preference system actually works. So in Australia, we have the most robust preferencing system in the world. That's really good, because so the way it works is you number a ballot. You're going to get 2 sets of how to vote cards in the election. You're going to get a green one for the lower house, which is all the coloured areas. You're going to have to number every single box in that. In this particular election, I think there's about 11 people running. There's a lot of people running here. I think it's Dobert. You're going to have to number all 11. Sorry? I think it's Robertson. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Often in marginal seats, they run more candidates because they think they can win it. So you're going to be given a green sheet on election day. You're going to have to number all of them. That's for the lower house. So that means you've got to pick which one. Now, obviously, we all agreed on the premise that these are Freedom Parties. You're obviously going to put the Freedom Parties on top. And not all of those are running in this particular electorate, but you are going to end up putting those first. And if you're unsure who's who, just follow my how to vote card. If you want to rejig it, you can rejig it. It's a resource. It's not a diktat. And that's what the lower house, that's what the green sheet looks like. But for the Senate, it's slightly different. It's slightly different. You can you're given this massive, there's 25 different groups on it, massive white piece of paper that goes sideways. You don't vote down, you vote sideways. And you have to, if you're going to vote above the line, you have to do at least 6 preferences above. And if you're going to do below the line, you do 12. Now, I'm encouraging people on my how to vote cards to vote above the line, but you don't have to do more than 6. And the good thing about that is, if you only do 6 Freedom Parties above the line, then your vote exhausts. The quota for a senator, it's no longer 800,000, it drops. So maybe we'll get a senator in off a smaller quota. So that's a bit of the technical side of it. But as I was saying before, we have the most robust preferencing system in the world, where if your first preference doesn't get in, they'll get the donation, they'll get the $2.90 per vote. If they don't get in, their vote will pass on to the next one that you've numbered, not that they've numbered, that you've numbered, and then if they don't get in, it'll keep going until it gets to someone gets 50%. There was a time when parties could trade your preference on your behalf. That's not what it is now. It's completely changed. A lot of people have asked that question. That's not a thing, and I'm glad they got rid of that. I do want to, just a few quick ideas. What can you tangibly do? You can vote. That's great. That's really good. But a lot of you have gone to the effort of coming out here. And some of the things I can really encourage you to do to sort of really help your community is, one, remember, go find those candidates. Go get a sign of them. I think some of them have signs here, actually. And start putting them up. Start putting them outside your house. Put multiple outside your house. Think about creative ways of where you can put them. And have conversations with people by saying, like, you do realise your vote's worth $2.90 and that we're all paying for that. And think of creative ways to actually change people's minds on this. Did you lose a job? Did you lose a family member? Were you unable to go to a funeral? Or did you Did your business suffer? These are things that people are really upset about. And one thing, I'm glad I remembered, one thing I actually suggested to people to do, when you get your sign, customize it. Maybe put something on the top or put a sticker on it, get a Sharpie, write on it and say, I lost my job. Now, this is what mine's going to say. I lost my job. That's why I'm voting for blah, 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 blah. Or, you know, my dad couldn't get his treatment for his cancer. He couldn't go overseas. That's why I'm voting for blah, 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 blah. You know, everyone's been impacted by this. Think about, humanize it. When you put a sign on your front lawn, your neighbour knows you. I'd like to hope you're all good neighbours. And they're going to think, well, he's saying UAP, I wonder why he's doing it. Eliminate that question. Write why you're doing it. In big writing, I lost my job, that's why I'm voting for this person. And I think that could be a really powerful thing. A lot of the other things we could do is actually more on a, not a higher level, but it's people that have platforms like myself, Pauline, a lot of the other platforms, Craig Kelly, what they're doing to sort of prod the system. And there's a lot of responsibility in that. We have to step up as influencers. I hate that phrase, but we have to step up and we have to be more creative about how we change minds. Whether that's challenging people like Friendly Geordies, whether that's challenging the Q&A, whether that's challenging people on Sky News, that's something for us. But on a ground level, it's done the old-fashioned way. It's foot on the pavement, talking to people, door knocking, asking people, is Jesus Christ your Lord and Saviour? But I think that when it comes to this election, I'm really encouraged about where it's going. I am. We're not going to form government. Sorry guys, I have to break it to you. I feel like I have to tell a loved one, another loved one's died. We're not forming government this election. It's very difficult to do so. There's a lot of electorates in this country that have got, this is a really cool tool here. It shows you how marginal the seats are in each electorate. So by how much percentage people won it. If the seat's above 10%, it's considered a safe seat. Now, I don't think a lot of the freedom pies are going to be able to form a coalition in order to form government. But what they can do is put the brakes on and say, hey, no, we've got the balance of power. You're going to stop this, and this is what we want. Then you can pass this particular legislation on economics or whatever with concessions. We don't want this digital passport. We don't want any of this. And that's the best thing you can do, really, guys, is volunteer for a lot of these people as well and make your vote count. I'm going to take some questions from the floor now. If anyone has to go, I understand if you have to go. But I do want to hear questions from people in the audience to hear what you've got to say. Can we all, before we move on, put our hands together for Kylie for putting this together and her mother? Thank you so much. I wasn't planning on coming up here, but you know, Kylie reached out to me and she said, you know, there's some people that wanted a bit more info about what's going on in the country, and they had a lot of questions. And I'll open the floor now to hear any questions on the election specifically. But yes,
I think we've got 7 candidates in Jammal. Is that correct?
Wow.
Right, so at the moment, the sitting member for Jammal is Emma McBride, and in the election in 2019. She won by a minor difference from the Liberal Party. So Jammal, we've got 1.5 difference. See? So this is one of the seats that the government is watching very, very carefully. So my question, Joel, is, well, I'm going to be putting Emma McBride as number 7 on the green paper. Yeah. Right. So would you recommend everybody does that? Puts the sitting member last.
Yeah, sure. So for the people listening on the live stream. I was just asked whether the sitting member should be put last, especially in the electorate of Dobell. There's 151 lower house seats. I haven't looked at the recommendations for this one. I'd need to look at the candidates. I would normally say yes. But there's a number of things that go into the making of our how to vote cards, and that's why I'm saying maybe wait till the 4th of May, and then I'm not saying to follow the turning point how to vote card, but I mean at least have a look at it and let it inform your decision. One thing I'm looking for in this particular electorate is, I wish I had a photo of the people running in this electorate. I wish I did. I could do it in real time with you. the people running in this electorate, I'd be looking for three things. I think the Greens are running, okay. I mean, they're pretty bad. You've got the Liberal Party running, of course. Actually, maybe the Nationals, because it's really fun. No, it's Liberals. Okay, Liberals. You've got the Liberals running, because sometimes it's Liberal Nationals, guys. You've got the Australian Labor Party running, obviously. Incumbents, 1.5%. They're really worried because they might lose this seat. You're going to definitely have some Freedom Parties running. We know Pauline Hanson and we know the UAP are running candidates in every seat. Some of them are here. And
The Liberal Democrats are running.
Liberal Democrats are running.
Fusion Party,
Yep.
which is incorporates.
Oh, yep.
The Fusion Party is not a Freedom Party.
No, that's right.
Yes, and I've acknowledged that. Now, then there's also, I don't know if there's any other independents that are running, but if there were, I would be very cautious of them. I haven't really liked some of the phrases that have gone out there. I've heard a lot of phrases go out there saying, you know, hashtag vote the majors last, hashtag put the sitting member last. I'll tell you why I've got a problem with it. I like it in concept, but most people don't know who the majors are. And they need it to be, I don't want to insult anyone, but need to be spoon-fed on this. And they need to understand, okay, these are the majors, this is exactly how you need to number it. Because if you don't really do it properly, you might end up with a Climate 200 candidate that wants to do climate lockdowns. And that's why I'm saying you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful about this. And that's why with the how to vote cards, I've made sure that I don't do them. I have a separate team that does them. They're really good. They did this sort of thing in the last election very effectively. They turned some Labor seats into marginal seats really well. But that's what I'd be looking for in this electorate. There's in every how to vote card, there's probably three stages. You want to put your freedom parties on top, and you do them as whichever ones you like the most. You probably have your major parties either at the end or in the middle, depending on what order they want, and it depends on if it's a marginal seat or not, or who has the seat. And then at the very end, you probably end up with a few independents, not in this electorate, but maybe in other electorates, where you're like, I don't want this Climate 200 person in. They're lying about who they're going to support. I know that if they get in, they're going to try and form government with Anthony Albanese. That's not what I want. And so that's where you've got to have a bit more nuance. So it's complicated. It's complicated. I wish I could give a straight answer on it, but it depends on the electorate. Wait till the 4th of May. You'll see our how to vote card and see how it comes out. And I don't know. I might even consider actually doing a video, especially for you guys to spread out to hear the reasoning behind that. But yeah, are there any other questions? Yep.
When you mentioned when you mentioned that you preferred to vote for the top one, what's the difference with voting preferences on the bottom?
Sure. For the top and the bottom. So what was your name again? Marsha. Yeah. So for those listening online, I was asked what the difference is between voting above and below the line. So above the line, I don't think anyone's gotten in before voting below the line. So the way it works, guys, is above the line you're voting for preset candidates. It's segmented. In New South Wales, we've got, I think, 25 or 26 groups. So that's UAP, all the freedom parties. They get their own sort of segment. And the way it works is, you've got let's use, in New South Wales, we've got the Liberal Democrats, for example. They've got John Ruddock as the first candidate, and then they've got someone else as the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth candidate. So when you vote above the line, it just makes the job a lot simpler. It means I want to follow their numbering on how to do it. Now, below the line, you're giving your vote to exactly that candidate. Now, I don't think anyone's gotten in below the line before. The most anyone's ever gotten was Jim Molan in the last election. He got over 140,000 votes below the line. It still wasn't enough. He needed 700,000, 800,000 votes in order to get in. But yeah, so that's probably the difference. Yeah.
So is above the line doesn't have preferences connected to that?
Preferences connected to that?
Do they have a preference of putting on to another party at all or not?
No, they do. They do. Yeah. So with the top and below, the preference system's still the same, except for the above the line, you only have to do a minimum of 6 preferences above the line. You can do more, and below the line it's a minimum of 12 preferences below the line. But the preference system still works. If your first guy doesn't get in, the second guy has a chance, and if they don't, it keeps going until your vote exhausts. If you really want...
It's not your own preference, they're not preferencing, I think, is that your question?
Yeah.
No, it's your preference.
Yeah, it's your preference.
1, 2, 3, you're choosing.
Yeah, as I said before, there's none of that trading. It used to happen, but parties do not trade your preferences. That's not a thing. But what you hear they are trading is with their how to vote cards. Just like how I'm putting recommendations out, each parties, they talk to each other and they say, okay, we'll put you number 2 on our ballot after us if you give us the number 2. And so that's what the UAP and the Liberal Democrats have done, which is, it's a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, they basically agree on the freedom policies. But sometimes what's happened in the past is past elections, there have been minor parties that have traded with the major parties and they've sold their own party out and the other independent parties at the time in order to get a crack at a marginal seat that they might win. They still do that today in terms of the how to vote cards. And I don't like that. You know, the thought, when I sort of brought out this, my own how to vote card system, one of the problems I saw was that the freedom parties might be tempted to do that with the major parties, and I'm not naming names. There's no evidence of this yet. That's why I wanted to have a ready-made solution. I've guaranteed that these freedom parties are getting precedent over the major parties. There's no electorate in the country, I can guarantee, where a freedom party has been preferenced below the majors. We're giving all of them a crack, and if none of them can get up in a particular electorate, then we didn't fight hard enough in the electorate. But the last thing I want is a situation where we betray our fellow freedom parties, where no one gets a chance to get up. Yeah, yep.
What happens if we don't form a government?
Well, if we don't form a government, we'll see. Do you mean even Labor or Liberal?
If neither of the top 3 get in, how do we actually get anything moving in the country?
Sure. Well, deals sort of have to be made. So what ends up happening? I think this happened under Julia Gillard. Yeah, well, to an extent, yeah. They'll just say that's politics. But with what ends up happening is let's say that Liberal get 74 seats and Labor get 69 seats because they didn't get enough seats up. Because that's actually how many seats they've got right now. Actually, let's say that. Oh, there it is, 68 seats. So this is where the Parliament is right now. Let's just say that the Liberal Party are actually short. They need 76 seats to be the government. Let's say that they ended up getting 74 seats. They were short by 2 seats. Well, what would end up happening is those members of Parliament in the middle, those other seats, there'd be 8 of them, not 6 of them, they would be given power from the government. They'd be basically, not bribed, but they'd be making deals with government. I say not bribed because this is what happens with the freedom parties. If the freedom parties get up and let's say there's 8 of them in the middle and they want to barter for your freedoms, they want to, even though we should have them, they want to say, okay, no lockdowns, freedom of speech online, we want a Bill of Rights for online free speech, we want no more lockdowns ever again and no mandates, no vaccine passports, and in return we will allow you to pass legislation on whatever, some economic policy or some climate change policy with these caveats. We don't want something from hell, we want something different. That's how that negotiation would happen. And so those people in the middle, and most of them will be independents, there will be climate independents there as well, climate 200 people. The Labor Party and the Liberal Party will be trying to buy them with different legislation, different promises, different seats in cabinet maybe. And that's what we'll see happen. Now, it's unlikely we'll see a situation where it's stalemated. I think they'll find a way to make it through. And so that's what we might see. And then the Governor General basically gives it a sign-off and then it goes through. But what could happen, this is something that could genuinely happen. Let's say that one of the major parties managed to convince some of these independents to join so that they have 76 seats so they can form government. What could happen is we could see a situation where they managed to form government in the lower house, but in the upper house, what ends up happening is they don't have the Senate seats to get through, because all legislation has to go through the lower house and the upper house. If they don't have the Senate seats to get legislation passed, and they keep butting up against this, and this happened with Malcolm Turnbull, we have this thing called a double dissolution election, where the whole Senate, not just half of the 76 seats, the whole Senate and the whole House gets dissolved and they go to another election. Like we could have another election next year if the Prime Minister wanted it. That could be an interesting situation. I wouldn't mind that, because that means that rather than 800,000 votes in New South Wales getting us 1 senator, we'd get 2 senators. So it's 2 for 1. And I think that when it comes to this election, I think it's unlikely we'll be able to get the balance of power in the lower house. But in the upper house, I think we could. And I think we could really put a stop to the government's plans on that. So I hope that answers your question to an extent. Yeah? No, please be honest, because that's why I'm here.
I've still got a lot to learn.
A lot to learn. Well, it's ridiculous what they've done. You know, when I was in school, I learnt a lot of this. I went to a pretty good school in North Parramatta, and civics classes used to be a lot more widespread, and they cut it. And it's like, why are you cutting it? I mean, they want you to be mindless drones, these sheep, you know, that they can control. It's disgusting.
I think also too, because of the last 2 years, you basically brought up a Liberal family or a Labor family.
Yeah.
So you didn't really need to understand, because everything, like you said, people would divide, your father would fight for the Australia.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, everything's been turned upside down.
Yeah.
And one of my friends said to me, oh, well, you know, like you don't break the law doing 100.
Yeah.
You've got laws and stuff. And I said, oh, well, so
Yeah.
all of a sudden they say you can do 100 through a children's zone. And I said, then you can drive through it, then you kill children.
Yeah.
And then the media doesn't portray it, but doesn't tell anyone, but it's happening. But things change overnight.
They do.
For a lot of us, that's what's happened.
My parents used to always say, vote Liberal, Labor spend all the money, and Liberal, they save it. And that was how I was taught. But we're certainly at a juncture right now. And the reason why, you're probably wondering, why is this 25-year-old able to get up here and teach me about my own democracy? Well, I actually didn't start about Australia. I actually started learning about American politics. I used to be a lefty in America, just following it. I've never been to America. But I ended up following it, and I became a conservative. I became a bit of a Trump lover. I reckon he's awesome. And then there you go. And that's why I said it'd be unusual.
You know what I sort of looked at everything differently with Trump. I don't care if people like him or not.
Yeah.
I watch him walk up on the stage,
Yeah.
and I watch word for word for half an hour, watch everything that he said.
Yeah.
And I watch 92% of their other media turn it into something different. And then I had to go and look at it again.
Yeah.
Something I'm hearing things.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In Australia, we're going through that right now, and it happened in Australia. It's happened in the UK, and it's funny. I was talking to my partner before about this. In Australia, we are on the cusp of having those populist leaders in Parliament. We're on the cusp of it. They're people that are going to come not only from the Conservative or right side or the Freedom parties, but they're also going to come from the left. And it's going to be really interesting because it's going to change the way we do politics in this country. So I'm here for it, and I've been waiting for it for a long time. In the UK, it happened with Brexit. In Australia, it's just happening now. And I'm always talking with the people overseas about this, about how they combated a lot of these problems. But are there any other questions? I'll go over to someone who hasn't asked one yet.
I just want to know about the banks.
Sorry?
The map for banks.
Oh, the map for banks? The electorate of banks?
Yeah, I kind of traveled.
So that's I'm trying to remember exactly where that is.
Now, the Bankstown area.
Oh, the Bankstown area. Okay.
I think I'm Liverpool.
Yeah, banks. It's just
Oh, yeah.
Oh, David Coleman.
I'm at East Hills.
Yes.
Yes, from the
Yes. So you're trying to find yourself on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to see where the school was.
Yeah. Actually, no. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll tell you why. So, I know a lot of people in the last election. What was the last election about? Scott Morrison running. He was basically running as the freedom candidate, but for religious freedom. You know, we had the whole Israel Folau thing going. I mean, we all laugh at it now, but at the time, I mean, I voted for him thinking that, you know, he was the photo of him with his hand up at Hillsong Church. Exactly. And so we all ended up voting against Labor Party, at least the Conservatives, because of what was going on with religious freedom at the time. We thought he was the Trump, and I laughed at the time. He's not a Trump. But what ended up happening was there were some really good, bloody people that they used the last election to turn some of these now marginal seats, like Chris Bowen's seat. It was not always a marginal seat. It used to be a safe seat. It used to be, I think, over 10%, possibly 15% safe seat. But what ended up happening was, whether you agree with the same-sex marriage vote or not, this is a bit of context. In that electorate, In Western Sydney, there are something like 12 out of the 17 electorates in the nation that voted no on same-sex marriage. They were in Western Sydney. It was disproportionately in Western Sydney. Now, there's a lot of people that look like me out there that voted no to same-sex marriage. But the interesting thing was in Chris Bowen's electorate of McMahon, he is one of the only members of parliament that voted against his own electorate. His electorate said, no, I do not want, men and whatever the plebiscite was on same-sex marriage, yet he voted for it. And so what a lot of people ended up doing was they ended up going around to the church leaders, to the imams, to all the religious churches out there, especially the Middle Eastern churches as well, and they started saying, hey, here's the Labor manifesto. They want to make Australia the gay capital of the world. They want to hold all these events here. And what ended up happening was Chris Bowen, by the time the election came around, people were so annoyed, and this shows you how much power you have. They were so annoyed that they ended up turning it from a safe Labor seat into a marginal Labor seat. Now everyone's after blood. Everyone wants to get Chris Bowen. Chris Bowen almost became the leader of the Labor Party, if you remember. After the last election, when Bill Shorten lost the unlosable election, there was a battle between Chris Bowen and Anthony Albanese in the factions. Chris Bowen didn't get up, Anthony Albanese did. But we almost had a situation where the leader of the Labor Party was in an unsafe seat. And this is the point. His seat is nowhere near, it's actually safer than your ones. The ones you have here, they're all below 6.6%. What do you got? Shortland 4.5, Dobell 1.5, Robertson 4.2. You can make a difference. You can make this even more marginal so that even if the Freedom candidate just misses out this election, next election, or even on a state level, people are like, oh, no. They screwed us over again. I should have listened to you. I'm sorry. And so you smash it again. You've learnt the skills. You've taught your kids the skills. 2 years, 3 years from now. We've actually got the local elections coming up in a year and a half. We've got a state election coming up in March next year. And as soon as you know it, we'll have another federal election, especially if we have a double dissolution election early. I mean, guys, we're in election season. And, this is really good if you really want to stick it to the government. And I'm really excited about that. But this is a message of hope. In the Western Sydney, now that's where the battle is. The Liberal Party were having a civil war over who they were going to run in Western Sydney. You've got marginal seats like McMahon, Werriwa, MacArthur, Lindsay, Parramatta, 3.5%, that's my electorate. Even Banks, as you were saying before. The fight is on. Are there any more questions? Yep.
I saw a thing on Facebook. Obviously, it's true.
Of course.
The fight is between Albo, Scummo, and Craig Kelly could get into Prime Minister.
No, I don't think it's a thing. Look, I support all the freedom parties, but as I said before, it's a pipe dream to think that. Don't get me wrong, I believe in Trump moments. I believe, what Trump did in 2016, it could happen. Maybe the country's that annoyed, I don't know. I just think that I can't see a situation where any of the freedom parties, even if all the 10 freedom parties after the election formed a coalition, there's no situation where any of them become a prime minister. And if they do, that'll be great for the country. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the best thing we can do this election is to vote as hard as you can in the lower house to get some seats up, because we can get some seats up. And in the upper house and the Senate, put the brakes on what the government's legislation is. Frustrate them so they can't keep ignoring you. That's what they've been doing for 2 years. Haven't been answering your emails, haven't been listening to your calls or our petitions. 309,000 signatures on a petition. It's come down to our vote. Our vote's our last thing we have. So no, I don't think it's a thing. I like Craig. I actually worked for him this time last year when he was an independent. He's a great guy, but no, I don't think it's a situation where we're going to see him become the Prime Minister. Yep.
There's a number of different groups saying don't vote.
For
different reasons.
Yeah.
I just wondered if you could say a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But people might never use it.
No, I agree. Honestly, I don't have a lot of patience for people that say don't vote. It's like, well, if you're such an expert, then we could really use you on the front lines. A lot of these people, they just say their vote doesn't count. I'm going to donkey vote. It's like, come on, guys. In my opinion, if you're not prepared to vote, then I don't know why you're even talking about politics. I mean, go to Florida, go to another country. In Australia, yes, we have mandatory voting. Maybe you don't want to vote. Okay, that's your choice. But after the last 2 years, if you haven't been stirred by seeing the pain that our country's been through, then you don't have a soul. I'm sorry, you don't. Our vote does count in this country. And this is coming from someone who covered the US election. I covered all of the things that happened in there. I covered how all the states unconstitutionally changed the way they voted for COVID, how they did the mailing ballots, how we saw those big jumps in the vote. I covered all of that in the show The Ark in... yeah, well, and that's another thing. We don't have Dominion voting in Australia. That's another myth that's been going out there. I'll tell you if we have it, you know.
When I say buy the night before, he should have conceded.
Yeah.
But I followed.
Yeah.
It was just, it really intrigued me. I don't watch mainstream. I'll tell you how long I haven't been watching mainstream TV. I actually haven't got the area fixed in my house for the last 16 years. so I only get YouTube, but I've never really been into it because my wife got a takeaway shop, so we didn't have time. And, but anyway, where was I getting at? It's when Kevin Rudd got ousted by Julia Gillard.
There you go.
And then it all started. Then all these reality TV shows started kicking everything, and then everything was just clickbait. Oh, Abbott's wearing speedos.
Who cares? Who cares? Honestly, this is a form of therapy. I love being here with you guys. Question up there.
Do you think that people that are spreading those sort of things could be propaganda from the major parties? Because I'm pretty sure they don't want us
to an extent. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, you know, some people they do mean well. They're just disillusioned, and sometimes a simple, you know, sometimes problems are so big people can't conceptualize them, so they try to put a simple answer on them. You know.
Can you just touch on the black line thing?
Black line?
The black line.
Oh, the vote above or below the line?
No, the black line. How they're spreading around to just put a black line.
Oh my gosh.
And how useless that is.
In the local elections, there were people going around saying, just cross it out, saying no candidate, or do a black line through the candidates, and then somehow it dissolves the government or something like that. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. I know people that were counting the votes in the local elections. First off, they were laughing at it, and then they stopped laughing because I was saying, you guys are idiots. The worst kinds of people now have the reins on the local elections in southwest Sydney and western Sydney because a lot of people didn't turn up and vote. In fact, in the electorate of Bankstown, there were it had an invalid vote of 39%. It's like that's a whole councillor. There's 12 councillors per council. That's a whole councillor. We could have. And I got so annoyed, guys. I'm not blasting any particular minor parties, but I got so annoyed because there were minor parties where in the local elections, I even gave ready-made, people with volunteers, candidates ready to go. They just needed the logo from one of these minor parties to take them and run with it, and they didn't do it. And I said, guys, look, I'm going to start calling you protest parties if you don't run candidates. You know, if you don't run at a local level, you can't win state. If you don't run at a state level, you can't win federal. A lot of people are trying to solve this problem, a lot of parties from top down. It's bigger than that. It's a cultural issue. And we've got to fight it on every single level. You've got to hand it to the establishment. They've done a really good job at percolating and doing this thing called the Long March through the institutions, where they penetrate the universities, which train priests, which train teachers, the teachers that train your kids. I mean, this cultural revolution that's been going on, this Marxist ideology that's been happening from Hollywood, they're smashing us. And if we don't start creating culture ourselves, we're screwed. Now, this is the thing, and I was saying this to my partner the other night. Did you guys watch the debate on Sky News of the Mavericks with Bob Catter, Pauline Hanson, Clive Palmer and Campbell Newman? When I saw them sitting on the stage, and it's okay, you didn't have to watch this. When I saw them sitting on the stage, what did I see? I saw 4 larrikins having a yarn and really enjoying their time. I couldn't see the Climate 200 people doing that. I can see them ripping their heads off. And that tells me we're starting to win that culture war, because you can tell the ones that are winning it because they're laughing and they're lighthearted. Yeah.
I'm going to have to disagree with you about Labor and Liberal taking the majority in the government in the next election. I personally think with what they've done for the last 2 years has had a huge impact on businesses, and I believe business owners are really pissed with these people. I think their families are, and I think we're going to be in for a Trump election from 2016. I feel that it's going to be Paul Hanson and United Party. that are going to form government together.
Okay.
Labor or Liberal, one of the two parties would be gone.
I'd welcome that. I'd welcome that.
That's my personal
Yeah.
I don't know any argument.
Yeah, it must be right. It must be right. I'm happy to. I'd love that. I'd love that.
Another thing I suggest that everybody does and tell the voters, it's not illegal to use a marked pen on your ballot card.
That's right. The AEC came out and they said you can bring your pen or your pencil if you want, or whatever you want. Bring your pen. Good on you. The reason why they said that they do the, I mean, you can believe them or not, but the reason why they said they use the pencils is because it's easier to store them from election to election, whereas with the ink ones it can sometimes go white, but that's all right. Yep.
What happens to those donkey votes and the line votes? Do they just get ignored?
Donkey votes count. So so I was asking about donkey votes and invalid votes. So donkey votes are where people just vote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on the ballot. That's still a valid ballot as long as you fill in all the numbers.
They don't vote at all because a lot of people just take the sheet, leave it empty.
It's considered an invalid vote. It means it's just gone. And the funny thing is you can see the amount of people that do invalid votes as well in each electorate. I think it's typically about 2% of the electorate do invalid, but you can imagine our shock when we saw the Bankstown electorate with like 38%. Wild. Anyway, yeah. Yep.
I just wanted to touch on something you mentioned before, writing your name, you want to vote your name, so you want to count your vote, you want your vote to make sense. One thing we can't do as candidates is be scrutineers. We can't be standing there while the vote's getting counted, and that's where we rely on you guys to stick your hand up and help us out. The more people we can have in the polling booth doing the count, the more accurate we know that election is. That's something we don't have any authority over, we can't do anything about. But the more people we can have stick their hand up and help us, the better it is.
Yeah, let me explain that for you and give you a bit of a pitch. So what's a scrutineer? Scrutineer is someone who basically safeguards the counting of the ballots on behalf of these candidates. Each candidate can allocate 1 or 2 scrutineers per polling booth, and I think there's something like 15 polling booths per electorate. Maybe it's different here. And what their scrutineers do is that's their trusted person that's signed, yep, this is the person I trust to go in on behalf of my candidature in this area, and you watch the counting of the ballots. It's a very important role. If you don't have training in it, it doesn't take much. I'm sure the parties are happy to offer that sort of training. It doesn't take much. You literally count votes as they come through. In America, they had a situation where scrutineers were sent out of the room so they couldn't watch it. In Australia, that's not the case. You can go in. You don't have to be vaccinated to do it. It's very important you do it. I'm hoping to come out, before the election, I'm hoping to come out with an animation to teach people in mass how to do it and to communicate with their candidates to make your job easier. But we'll see. I've got a lot on the plate right now. I'm doing as much as I can. But
I've got somebody that put their hand up to be scrutineer for me, and then when she's rung, she's still trying to find clarity about whether or not she was told she needed to be vaccinated.
Right.
So and then she's being bounced around, and no one, someone's meant to call her back. So it's been
Right.
on for 2 days.
Right.
Yet it says on the disinformation AEC that you don't need to be vaccinated to be a scrutineer.
Yeah, I think
so there's a lack of clarity.
Yeah.
It's taking a couple of days to even sort out with the AEC.
Yeah, I think with the AEC, if you want to work.
Working there, and they said you had to have your vaccinations.
Yeah.
To work there, but not
Yeah, so if you're
So I'm doing it for UAP.
yeah.
And I'm not vaccinated, so I can still do it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so my understanding is if you're going to be a scrutineer, you don't have to be vaccinated. If you want to work under the AEC, unless you have an exemption to not get the jab, then you can work for the AEC, which I think is ridiculous. But anyway, are there any other questions? I understand it's getting a bit late.
What indicators give away one of these public independents? Are they like unique to the candidate, or are there sort of like common factors?
Are you talking about the Climate 200 one?
What is it through like their policies, through funding?
How are they able to? Oh, so they were established by. Oh, geez, who knows the name of the guy? So can you say it one more? Holmes the Court is the last thing. So he has $20 million in funding that he's actually put forward. I think he's the son of the first Australian billionaire. I think he's from South Australia. And he ended up basically committing $20 million to these climate independents. If you search Climate 200 candidates, you can see all of them. Every time I see them, I'm putting them basically at the end of these how to vote cards. Sorry?
They're supposedly working for Labor, or
Well, some of them are former Labor members, and some of them, yeah. So they're really, I mean, they haven't done a very good job at, sort of cleaning it up. They're, yeah, it seems that way. They're nasty people. They're not people that we want with the balance of power forming government. They're going to get some pretty radical things done if they do. Yeah.
One comment and then a question.
Sure.
The comment is that you've got to be careful about the names of parties. For instance, the Animal Justice Party. Most of us are all in favour of.
Yeah.
We've got our pets and we love animals.
Yeah.
Just because they're called that doesn't mean that that's all they are. When they did the ballot last Friday for the positions on the ballot, one of my observations was that there was a nice little huddle of Labor and the animal justice people at the end of it. So that sort of indicated to me that they're closely aligned to Labor and the...
Yeah. You know why that... Oh, sorry. That was you've got a question.
Yeah. Well, it's a concern, but I want to know what you know about it. But it's about the postal voting. Very concerned about why parties are involved in that process and sending forms out to people to go back to the party. Like, isn't a vote between the AEC and the...
It's disgusting. It's a loophole, and I tried to talk about that the other night. Kudos to Pauline Hanson for calling this out. I saw her call it out first in Queensland. I don't like it. I don't like it, as Pauline would say. I don't like what I'm seeing with these postal votes and this loophole that they're manipulating to not only harvest your information so they can bombard you for future elections for your vote, like the state election, but what are they doing with your vote? Why are you registering through them? I don't like it at all. So what happened? I did a video on this the other night where I received in my mail. For New South Wales, my electorate of Parramatta, they said, you want to register by postal vote? Here's the form. The form goes in New South Wales, the form goes to the official site. It goes to the official post of in New South Wales. So that's fine, that's all good. In Queensland, that wasn't the case. It was going to Labor HQ, and that's not how it should be. And then they were processing it, and they were taking care of it for you. And I disagree with that. But the other thing which was interesting was there was a QR code for the Senate candidate, Maurice Payne, and if you scanned the QR code, you'd think, it says, do you want to register for a postal vote? Here, do it digitally. You scan it thinking you're going to go to the AEC website, an official website. It takes you to a website where it says Liberal Party of Australia, and it doesn't have the logo or anything for the Liberal Party of Australia because it seems like they're just trying to do it on the down low, and then you just put in all your postal information. And it's like, yep, great, we've got your information now. Yep, we'll sort out your postal vote, but and we'll register you. But now we have your information to just spam you with everything. So that stuff is gold, that information. It's absolute gold. So I strongly disagree with what they're doing.
I think the AEC will be under intense scrutiny this time because people are concerned that, one, that we get the Freedom Parties up, but two, is that it's done properly, that the count's done, because as you said, I think there's a lot of unrest and people don't believe that it's going to be a minor thing, there's going to be something significant happen.
Yeah.
So the party has the information now to say that you are going to do a postal vote. So you've applied for it, so there's a good chance that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And they have your name, your address and your date of birth. There's nothing stopping them on polling day sending someone to a polling booth, saying your name, address, date of birth, ask the question, have you voted before? No, and away they go.
That's a possibility. That's a possibility. And do we check ID at the polling booths? So. Yeah.
But what I was surprised to have to answer on their questions was that you need a security question and a pass, what your security answer is, and they want you to put that security answer on the envelope when you send it back. So that identifies you.
That's That's no good. That's no good. Yeah, that's not all right. Yeah, yeah. You know who could really fix up our voting system really well? I mean, we've got it pretty better than the Americans, but Professor David Flint, I think he's 86 years old. I'm trying to squeeze as much wisdom out of him as I can. He's got a lot of solutions. He's pointed out a lot of different things people haven't on voter fraud, and man, does Victoria need it. Victoria's got the worst voter fraud in the country. We're going to have a real challenge with the state election in November. But he's someone I want to work closely with to sort of help solve these problems and lobby. Part of the freedom parties, if they get the balance of power, part of the things they should be bartering for is safe and fair elections, and making some of these, implementing some of these changes. Absolutely, yeah. It's my pleasure.
I'm a big fan of Bossy, and I know that the Australia One Party is not registered.
Yep.
So, who is he? Has he got a favourite up there, or a couple of favourites?
So he's running in the electorate of Greenway. So that electorate is actually a marginal seat, 2.8%. You can see the title for it just there. So he's, I think he's lived there for a while now. He's running for that electorate. Now the reason why I've said unregistered is because the party's not registered. But that doesn't stop you from running. He's running as an independent. So people won't know that he's with Australia One, the party, but that doesn't stop him from running. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he ends up going this election. Any other questions? Yep.
Two things, chiefly. One, I was thinking of recommending to everyone to take a photo of their vote. And then they can always, that's a way of...
Yeah. Well, that works. Yeah.
Then you can send it off to each electorate you voted for.
Yeah.
So they've got a copy, and then they can know whether there's anything.
Well, one of the things I like, and I'll come back to you for your second comment, one of the things I really like about the project I'm doing with the How to Vote cards is if I have tens of thousands of downloads in an electorate and only 500 votes come through, I can be like, guys, what are you doing? I got 10,000 downloads for a How to Vote card for the electorate of Parramatta, yet the candidate that we had as number one only got 500 votes. I mean, what are you doing? This is tangible evidence that, and this is why I'm encouraging people to download it rather than screenshot it. Download it from there. That way we have the data to actually go to the parliamentarians and say, hey, this is how many people in this electorate don't agree with what you did.
The voting forms don't have your name on it.
Yep, that's right.
So you can take a picture of it.
Exactly. I could take 10 different photos of the same, How to Vote card. Well, yeah. What was your second?
Just the other day was thinking kind of fun about if the Liberals and Labors don't get the major seats, which is what we don't want them to get.
Yep.
Is that then called a hung parliament?
Yep.
If the Freedom Party gets
Yep. If no one gets yeah.
Because then you'll have accountability and transparency more. They're going to stand up and fight.
That's right. Yeah. If no one gets 76 seats in the lower house, no one's. It's called the hung parliament, and then they'll have to barter and say, "Hey, Bob Catter, you've got 1 or 2 seats. Do you want to give us that extra 1 or 2 seats, and we'll give you this for your electorate. We'll fund your. I don't know. We'll build you a dam or something." And then he'll be like, "Yeah, I'm hoping Bob Catter sticks to his guns and fights for more than that." But because I like Bob. But yeah, that's typically what happens. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they go to it's really bad to scare people because that's what they do.
Yeah, they do. They do.
But yeah, we really need to get a hung parliament.
Absolutely. Did you have a question? Yeah.
Joel, the How to Vote tool.
Yep.
4th of May. Right. What's your plan on rolling that out?
Oh, sure. So it's a simple. I mean, I've got a pretty big distribution avenue through my social media. I've got, I think, 260,000 followers across all platforms, and that's also censorship proof as well. On my Telegram, I've got 42,000 followers there, so if I need to, I can get it out quickly there. It'll be in the form of a link, and that's really handy because you can grab that link, you can share it, and I need you guys to share it. If you agree with it, I don't want to, and then that link it'll take you to a website. You type your address in, it'll spit out a How to Vote card just for your area. And that's our recommendation of how to vote. And we guarantee that Freedom Parties are going to be on top. We're not going to screw you on that. I don't know what the other Freedom Parties are going to do with their How to Vote cards, but I'm hoping that in good faith they're all preferencing each other to give them all the best chance. But yeah, it'll be nice and easy. Yeah. Yep.
Is the website going to be able to handle the traffic?
Yes. Yes. I've got a good guy on it. Make sure. I mean, so I'm releasing it on the 4th of May for that reason, especially. Early voting doesn't even start on the 4th of May. It starts on the 9th, so it starts on the following Monday. So that's when early voting starts. Early voting happens 2 weeks before the election. So that'll give you heaps of time to vote. No, because we have contingencies, which I can't say on the live stream. But we have contingencies. Yeah, they can't shut it down. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that.
Do you have to be a party to volunteer to scrutiny? A member of a party to volunteer to scrutiny?
That's a great question. I think...
You just got to be endorsed by the candidate.
Yeah.
You just have to be... So you don't have to be.
You don't have to be a member of the party, you would just have to be endorsed by the candidate, so I'm happy for you to...
Thanks for that.
On my behalf.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, for those on the stream, you don't have to be... you just have to be endorsed by the candidate. It could be someone outside the party, yeah.
Just quickly, with relation to the postal vote and the ID thing on there, that ties in the other day when we were at the ballot draw. The guy there, we asked a similar question. How do you know if someone walks in and votes in person and then the postal vote? He says, well, we can cross-check the postal vote and check that they haven't voted in person. So that would tie in with how they verify who that vote's for. So they would, you know what I mean? Because he said that, and we wondered how you would be able to cross-check. But he sort of indicated, oh, we can check when they get a postal vote, they'll check that they haven't voted in person. I don't know what happens if you have, because then the postal vote becomes invalid because you voted there.
There's certainly a lot that needs to be done on that, and wow, there's still 300 people listening live. I can't believe it. That was probably higher before, so I was just checking how many people have tuned in. I liked it. If you're listening live, give it a share. There's 300 people listening. If you share it, that translates into at least 15,000 views. That's a lot. That's a lot for no money behind it. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Just one comment.
Yeah, sure.
With no disrespect, I'm very, very grateful, as I guess everybody else is, that you did lose your job in construction.
Yes.
And where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time? Are we likely to see your name?
No. I'm very. I don't want to say too much of the story, but no, I've publicly stated, ask me again in 20 years. I think I need to brush up on my economics a bit more. I probably should have paid more attention in school with economics. I mean, I understand it, and I do, but I just want to brush up a bit more on it. Especially with the fiscal policy, there's a few things there I'd want to brush up on before I'd even consider it. But again, ask me in 20 years. It feels weird as a 25-year-old telling you guys how to run your business. First off, I think government should get out of that, and they should just reduce the taxes and just reduce the bureaucracy. But again, I don't feel like I'd be in a position to do that. And one of the things that really turned me off politics, and part of the reason I'm not in any party, and this suits me just fine, not being a part of any party, is in 2019, I actually was, I was a part of the Christian Democrat Party, and I helped highlight a lot of the corruption and a lot of the nepotism and a lot of the hundreds of thousands of dollars in illegal transfers that were happening. And I can talk about this now because the party was just recently wrapped up in this year. And Fred and I did some great work in the Christian Democrat Party, but unfortunately it just collapsed from within. And I saw the worst. This is the Christian Democrat Party. I mean, coming from a Christian, this is meant to be the party that sets the standard in terms of morality and purity. And so when I saw that, it really turned me off. And that's a really good teaching point for you guys. You're going to probably, I'm encouraging all of you to join a party, or at least one person in your family join a party. But I've got nothing against freedom parties, but when they inevitably go wrong, do not get turned off politics, please. Do not. That's what happened. That's why we're in this mess. It's because people tapped out of politics. Find another party. Maybe you need a hiatus from parties. Maybe you just need to, sort of be a floater or whatever. But do not let it turn you off politics. You can see it's not turned me off politics, despite seeing how bad it was. Don't let it get you down. It's only a matter of time before... The Liberal Party, once upon a time, was a great party. It was a really good party. It was a conglomeration of 21 minor parties under Menzies. UAP was one of them. And it was actually quite good. And of course, inevitably, it turned bad. But for a time, it was doing some great work. I mean, part of the reason why Australia's economy is so good is because the Liberals did have some good fiscal policies in the past. But we are where we are now because people tapped out, so do not tap out. That's it. And remember, look, I love all these freedom parties, just remember, look out for number one. They will always ask for more from you than you can put out. But right at this point, we are in the sprint. We're 20 or so days out from the election. So go hard, but remember, you do have kids, you do have responsibilities. You know, it's weird telling people older than me, remember, don't forget about your kids, but like, yeah, look out for your family. Yeah.
Before we come here and then I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, but I hope that answers your question. No plans for politics. A lot of people ask me that, and I'm like, no, don't worry, guys. Like, you're the wrong person. Yeah.
I've got a comment myself to make.
Sure.
I believe that we have more than two leaders to pick from.
Okay.
I believe that the UAP and the One Nation Party have candidates in every seat and for the Senate. That brings them up the same as Labor and Liberal. So whenever you see someone saying, oh, we've only got two leaders to pick from, say, no, we've got four.
Yeah.
We've got four people to pick from, not two. These two turds that they're putting out here in the media.
It makes me sick because when you see the debates, they frame it in a way that it's like, oh, here are the crazies, here are the mavericks, and then here are the prime ministerial candidates. It's like, no, hang on a sec. When you guys did the debates in America, when they did them in America, you got often 16 people on a stage for the Democrats. Why can't we have more than two people in Australia on a stage? I mean, Australians, you know, we're simple people. We enjoy, you know, the simple things in life, but we can handle more than two people debating. I mean, it's an insult.
I'm just really so over this two-leader crap. You know, and
But they are the immediate.
And it turds.
Yeah, they are.
Turds.
They really are.
They're not worth the vote.
They're not. They're not at all. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's a slogan I can get behind. Defund the majors. Do not give them your first vote. That's how they get funding. $50 million between Labor and Liberal. Just Labor and Liberal.
We need to tell people you've got more than two people to pick from.
That's right.
There's a lot of parties.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I only know four parties that have got people in every seat and for the Senate.
That's right.
And that's four, not two.
That's right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
You can't do that maths real well.
They can't. I would, you know, one of the things I really wanted to do this election, I wish I moved a lot quicker and I had more resources. I wanted to host some debates. I really did. I wanted to moderate some. I wanted to get some freedom parties to tear the throats out of some of the major parties which that have been doing these things to us. It's like, hey, look at the mother in the audience. They just had to sell her house, single mother, 3 kids, because of lockdown. They don't want it. But this is the thing. Eventually, we will get to the point where we will be forming government, and you believe that that's this election. I believe, you know, that's not out of the realm of possibility, but in the next election, I think it's more likely. But either way, we are building our own parties. We are building our own media. That's what I'm doing. We are educating our own people. We are building our own homeschooling because they have abdicated their responsibility. When Jordan Peterson was out here in Australia in February 2019, he gave me a piece of advice. He gave me one of his 12 rules for life ahead of time. He wrote a second book and he gave me the rule ahead of time. He said, where responsibility has been abdicated, opportunity lurks. Those words have guided me this whole time. The media, they abdicated their responsibility, and that's why you see a lot of the work that I'm doing right now. Now, that's where you guys come in. Think about the ways you can get out of the mainstream and get out of the establishment's way of doing things. But yeah.
There's also one other thing I want to backtrack on.
Sure.
Was about the vaccine mandates. You mentioned the Nuremberg Code.
Yep.
There's actually the Australian immunisation out there. Right? If you read the informed consent now, they can't do what they've been doing to us.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, and they want you to forget. They want the way they're framing this election is they're saying, oh, this is about economics, this is about China, this is about defence. This is not about those things. This election is about what you just did to us the last 2 years. They just want to brush it on the carpet. They're saying, oh, petrol prices are high because of what's going on in Europe. It's like, you're kidding me. Inflation's happening because what's going on the global stage, the instability. That's not what's going on. Are you kidding me? They think you're stupid. And this is the thing. We will make a difference this election. We will see a situation where freedom parties get a foothold, and we will see a situation where the country takes a radically different turn. But this is the thing. If the freedom parties don't get the balance of power in the lower house or the upper house, and the lefty ones do, the Climate 200 ones do, we're screwed. We're really screwed. Nothing's irreversible. We do have a state election as well. We can keep a lot of this stuff at bay. But November in Victoria is their make or break. And that's not my opinion, that's Topher Field's opinion. He wrote Battleground Melbourne.
On the Anzac Day, when the soldiers were marching down through Melbourne, turned their backs on old dictator Dan.
Yeah, it makes me sick. Out of respect of the Anzacs, I didn't do a segment on that day to say, you bastards did this to us, and now you have the gall to tell us that you stand with the Anzacs. And we live in a great country where we have certain freedoms, freedom of speech. It's like, are you kidding me? I had police on my doors. I'm still fighting a court case, from last year for my actions of free speech and being a journalist. I mean, I didn't do a segment on that because of my respect for the Anzacs, and that's their day. But this election, people in this room, people around the country, they're going to send a message. I think I agree with you there.
It's a powerful thing what they did, and that was shown to the whole of Australia.
Yeah, my partner was there when they were firing. You know the infamous shot where they're at the shrine and they were firing those rubber bullets, and you could see them with those sort of shotgun-looking pellets. She was there. She picked up a dog and she ran with the dog because they were shooting it not only at people, not only at unarmed civilians, but pets as well. This is what we're talking about. It's actually on live stream. I think she got it.
Railway station last year,
They got slammed.
So hard on the ground.
Yeah.
He was bleeding from the ears and nose, and he pissed and pooed his pants.
Yeah, and that police officer was dealt with, but there have been a number of occasions where the police officer has not been dealt with. I know a lot of people that are still fighting fines from the 24th of July in Sydney.
Scott Morrison gets up on TV and says, we're a peaceful country.
Yeah, I could talk all night about this, but I want to get the last few questions, and I want to make sure everyone gets home before 10.
Look, I'd like to say, I would think everybody here is very informed. You wouldn't be here now.
Absolutely.
There isn't anybody here who is not intending to vote. Everybody is going to vote, and I think everybody's got their head around what we're trying to achieve. It's the masses out there, isn't it? It's the sleepers. It's the people that are just fixated with their family, Labor or Liberal. I think lost a friend this week because she's so stuck in that mode. So it's how do we get people to shift? That's the challenge.
Absolutely, and remember, you are not alone. You are not alone. That was I haven't released this before. This is a photo of the people I took. It was a panoramic shot of all the people at the protest on the 24th of July. You are not alone. There are so many people in New South Wales, in Sydney, around the country, that agree with what's been they agree with exactly what's been going on. That goes on and on. I've got so many images of what happened that day. I mean, it was not 3,500 bullheads. It was not 3,500 bullheads, okay?
And that's the reason why we're going to win. That's the reason. Those people. Because they've got families.
They think you're stupid. They think you're stupid. And this is the thing. Maybe this is all the voters. I don't know. But if all of those people joined a party, you'd outnumber the major party's members in New South Wales. Joined a party, any party, yep.
I sort of say, because we do a Friends of Robinson with all the parties, we've got 5 freedom parties in Robinson.
That's great.
Out of 11. So I say look at our policies so you can see, because we do differ from each other, even though we've got a pro-freedom policy, all of us, we then differ, so how you then talk to people, that's dependent on, like if people are more into the environmental, there's different places you can put people to, rather than just be the one thing. So you get other people that want change on different levels as well.
God bless you. One thing I can recommend to any Freedom candidates and anyone that's in a different electorate, if you can encourage your Freedom candidates to work together on one thing, it's have one central place where you can pick up posters. It'd make it a lot easier.
Is it a conflict of interest? We're happy to do it for all.
Well, I mean, it's up to you guys to work. It's up to you guys about how you make that happen. But I think it's a great idea because it actually encourages people to put more than just one on the ballot. And you could even slap on, this is my first preference, second preference, third preference. This is why I'm voting for them because I lost my job. Be creative. It's what you make it. I think you got to be careful. In some councils, they take the posters off the polls, but I mean, some people they don't care. They're doing it anyway. But yeah, look, it's up to you. In Parramatta, they're taking them down everywhere. Anyway, are there any more questions? I wanted to make sure I get around to everyone. Beautiful. Everyone, yep, sorry. All right.
Anyone wants to come along, so that'll be the four of the Freedom Parties in Robinson. There'll be the four of us there to answer any questions that anyone's got. We'll give you our opinion on any questions you've got, all four candidates. As Kate said, we've got one thing in common, we want our freedom back. Apart from that, then we'll start to differentiate each other and go at different ways. But one thing that the four of us all have in mind and all want to get together is your own freedom back.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. Amen. Amen. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope this really helped. I'm going to hang around for a bit as I slowly pack up. But I really want to thank you for all coming out. Stick together. This is your community. Remember, this is all about building that social fabric again. It's a sign. Get out of here. It's like you can tell I'm a big bloke because I'll just put my weight on now. I was like, oh geez, I'll sort that out later.
I just want to say thank you all for coming tonight. It's great to see so many in our community that are like-minded. There are a lot more that could have been here that didn't know it was on. We could only have so many. So Joel, I just want to say thank you from all of us.
My pleasure.
I also wanted to thank my daughter Kyla. Yes.
Oh no. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much. Cheers. Thank you, Kyla. This is awesome. Thank you guys so much. Everyone that's been listening on the live stream, I've got to do this every time to make sure they share it up. Share, like, and subscribe. I couldn't do this without you guys at home. The reason I'm able to take time and go up here is because you've been donating through the camera. I'm able to go from different states and help them. So everyone listening at home, thank you so much. Give this a share, get it out there. And to you guys in the room, thank you so much. And stick together. You don't need me to meet up. And remember, be careful of talking too long about there's a million things going wrong in the world. Remember to keep your focus on specific things that you agree on, work together on it, build coalitions, and work that way. There's a million problems in the world. We can't solve them all, but work on the things that you have in common. But thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys drive safely. Beautiful. I'll see you all later. Yep.
Before you go, some news goes ahead. Denmark has now suspended their COVID vaccine program. So that's fun. You keep up the pressure. Hopefully
this is for you. Yeah, sure, no worries. Candidates, I have gifts for you. Where are you? Yeah, end the stream. See you later, guys. Take it easy.